Solstice, the quest for the Staff of Demnos, is an ambitious concept created by developer Software Creations and was actually their first original development title, as prior they had only ported games to 8-bit consoles. I guess they needed to justify the creations part of their name. Well, anyway, the story of the game takes place on the eve of the winter solstice. And since this year's winter solstice is nearly here, what better time to have a look at Solstice on the NES?
You've conquered Super Mario Bros. 3, beaten Ninja Gaiden 2, trounced Tetris. Now you must face the greatest challenge, Solstice. Solstice, the final test of the Game Master. Solstice by ImageSoft at all Toys R Us.
Whittled down to its most basic pieces, Solstice is an isometric 3D grid-based platformer. Off the bat, you might be impressed with the graphics here, and they are well done. While most of the game is basic cubes and things, the 3D concept was eye-popping for its time. The purpose of the game is to navigate a 250-room castle as the wizard Shaddix, who must locate the evil villain named Morbius, who has the beloved Princess Eleanor. It's the old damsel in distress routine once again, and it's not going to be easy. For starters, 250 rooms is a lot, and the game is pretty tough for a variety of reasons. The first and foremost is that much of the game relies on your 3D platforming skills, and while the grid-based layout of each room helps some, the depth perception is still lacking, especially when it comes to height, so you might have to stare at something for a bit to figure out how far off the ground it is. On top of that, because it's an NES game probably, many of the puzzles are rather obscure. Shaddix's actions are fairly limited. He can jump, and he can pick up or drop objects. Jumping can be improved with a power-up of Elven Boots, which allows him to jump a little higher, and because Shaddix is a wizard, his arsenal wouldn't be complete without a few magic spells to help him along. Shaddix can collect 4 different colored beakers you can access from the pause menu, and these help in a number of ways, like a blue one for invincibility, a purple one for destroying all objects in a room, a yellow one for freezing everything in place, and a green one for making invisible objects appear. The real bummer is that this isn't described in the game except only by color, so if you don't have the manual handy, you might be chugging all your potions to figure out what they all do. And yeah, invisible objects. You may be able to reveal helpful platforms to get past some spiked floor areas, for example. And speaking of invisible, it's not just the doors on either side of a room that serve as the entrances and exits. In some rooms you can also go up and up. This won't always be apparent, so a huge part of this one is exploring and trying everything in each room. Thankfully, this game has a map, and you're going to need it, as it's a giant castle that snakes around and loops back on itself in some confusing ways. I even found it more helpful to jot down my own map as I went, just to detail what items I got from there, and maybe even ones I could see but couldn't reach yet. Blocks are a big part of this one, and thanks to the demo that plays out if you don't hit start for a second when you boot up the game, you'll learn that you can even use some of the roaming enemies in the rooms to transport blocks for you. You can push the blocks over onto their heads and then ride them around the room. The timing here is picky and perils abound, but thinking outside the box is really what this game is all about. Luckily, these guys have no feeling on the top of their heads, so they have no idea you're riding them like a minecart. The continue system in this one is kind of neat, I guess. If you locate the spinning coins, they serve as continues, so that if you die in possession of the coins, you'll continue from a checkpoint, opposed to being sent back to the beginning of the castle. If you are sent back to the beginning of the castle, you do keep anything you found, but you'll have to navigate each room the same as you did the first time as they reset. That's a big reason this one can take a while, as it is hard. 250 rooms is a bunch, but the nearly roguelike nature of it can really take the wind out of your sails if a mistimed jump or something like that costs you a good run. To defeat the game, you must find all 6 pieces of the magical staff of Demnos so you can use that to attack Morbius with. You're going to be scouring the castle up and down for those 2. All said, Solstice is not a game I would recommend to anyone who considers themselves remotely impatient, as this is one that requires a lot of exploration and, well, patience to survive. That's not to say there's really anything wrong with it though. If you like getting the grid paper out while you play a game, this is one that offers plenty to search for and is seemingly fair and difficult if you can overcome the testy platforming. The soundtrack here, done by Tim Fallon, who also created the soundtracks for Bubble Bobble and Echo the Dolphin, is featured here and it is really slick. A game like this kind of needs a good soundtrack that isn't overly grating or too repetitive since Solstice doesn't really have any breaks. It's one long puzzle-filled quest with no levels or boss fights to break it up. A sequel, Equinox, came out on the Super Nintendo 3 years later. In that one, Shaddix has been imprisoned, and you play as his son Glendal on a quest to rescue your dear old dad. It plays much the same as Solstice, but with 16-bit affordances like better graphics, a better sense of depth, and is broken into levels for better pacing. Well, that does it for Solstice on the NES. Don't chug unlabeled potions, and thanks for watching.